Last but not least, so here we'll discuss the special education submission that is completed in end of year 4 and what we can do prior to the opening of end of year 4 on May 6th in order to ensure a good special education submission in end of year this year. All right. The end of year 4 submission data comes from your special education data system. These are systems like SACE, Cirrus, or Welligent. And these systems have an API that establishes an automated transfer of your end of year 4 data. So that data arrives in CALPADS via an automated transfer with no work needed on the part of CALPADS coordinators for the actual submission. However, LEA data coordinators will need to monitor your snapshots and your validation errors because many errors are related to enrollment and to special education plan types. The students with disability data in end of year 4 is used to meet the reporting requirements of Section 618 of the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, or IDEA. And the files that are used to submit your end of year 4 data are, first we have the Students with Disabilities status file, which is sometimes referred to as the SWDS file, and I sometimes wish it wasn't. This file is used to determine a student's eligibility for and participation in the special education program at any given time. And this is in line with IDEA reporting, DataQuest, and the California School Dashboard. Next, we have the Students with Disabilities Meetings, or MEET file, which is used to capture the dates that specific types of statutory meetings were held. And this includes initial evaluations, annual plan reviews, eligibility reevaluations, and pending meetings. And the MEET file is used to monitor the timelines of these statutory meetings. Next, we have the Students with Disabilities Plan file, which is used to identify the specific plan and the settings that a student is on at any given time. We then have the Students with Disabilities Services, or SERV file, which is used to report services for children and students ages 0 to 22 who are eligible and participating in the special education program and have active plans or will have active plans during the reporting year. Finally, we have the post-secondary status, or PSTS file. This provides outcomes for students with disabilities a year after leaving secondary or a year after leaving K through 12 education. Again, it's essential for an early start and a successful finish to end of year 4 that you identify and establish relationships with the staff involved in the submission as early as possible. And for end of year 4, this does include your school site staff, your special education staff, your CELPA directors, site administrators, student system support staff, and particularly in end of year 4, this is true, your student families, sorry. All right, let's now move on to discuss the end of year 4 pre-snapshot or pre-May 6th submission activities here. So your special education data coordinators are generally very good about submitting records for students with disabilities in a timely manner. The CALPADS view submission screen consistently shows frequent activity for most LEAs for the status, MEET, plan, and serve file types. The submission is ongoing, and this data is being submitted now with the exception of the post-secondary status, or PSTS file. The PSTS often gets overlooked as the data is not needed prior to end of year 4. So data coordinators may want to encourage the submission of PSTS records with your special education department. And it may help to identify any students who were not surveyed and still need to be surveyed as a requirement of IDEA. All right, let's talk about enrolling students with disabilities. Enrolling students with disabilities in CALPADS sometimes can be challenging. Most of the issues with their enrollment come when they receive services, but they do not attend a school site. We see the enrollment status of 50, which is a non-ADA enrollment. We see that enrollment status used inappropriately, and we see the enrollment status of 20, which is the secondary enrollment. We see that used incorrectly. And we can see in this table that the recommended enrollment status for students with disabilities are either 10 primary or 50 non-ADA, but only students served on an ISP or an IFSP should have an enrollment status of 50 reported. And you should take a look at the grade levels where that enrollment status of 50, the non-ADA, is reported. These are for the very small children typically. All students with disabilities do, though, need to be reported. And if they are in your said system, they also need to be in CALPADS and in your local student information system. So end of year 4 is the last opportunity to ensure that students with disabilities have been enrolled correctly and that all students evaluated for services, eligible or not, are reported so that your LEA can meet the IDEA child find requirements. So that is a note on enrolling students with disabilities. And I do think really the problematic enrollment status that's most often used incorrectly is that enrollment status of 50 non-ADA. And it's typically used outside of the appropriate ISP or IFSP criteria or scenarios. All right. Let's talk about some CALPADS data discrepancies. CALPADS data discrepancies in end of year 4 are generally not visible in SACE, CIRIS, or in the other special education data systems. So you'll need to work with your special education data coordinator to resolve the common and frequently occurring errors. And common and frequently occurring errors in CALPADS at end of year 4 include the SENR 606E4. This is the missing plan record for an enrolled, eligible, and participating student. The plan 390 to 397, which are the various missing transition indicator errors, and the SENR 439, that should say E1. Make a note that we need to update this slide. There's a typo. It should say SENR 439. I think E4. There's a typo there, and we will need to update it, which is the adult age students with disabilities in transition, missing but required for a record. Your end of year 4 data discrepancies are viewable in CALPADS right now. So it would be beneficial for CALPADS data coordinators to look at your end of year 4 data discrepancies with your special education coordinators so that you can resolve them early and you can start resolving the DDs that are viewable now before May 6th. So you can start working with your special education folks right away after this training is over if you feel so motivated. Additionally, a monitoring report 16.21 will allow you to monitor special education timelines and can be reviewed early. So students with disabilities complete K through 12 education in a variety of contexts. So some will earn standard high school diplomas, some will earn a certificate of completion, and some will graduate using alternate pathways. So it would be wise to review your students with disabilities completer information in CALPADS to ensure that you've captured the nuances of students with disabilities K through 12 completion. So that is kind of your DDs and reports and things you can be working with your special education coordinator on now prior to May 6th. All right, there is a common pain point in end of year 4, and this is a common pain point for your CALPADS coordinators, not necessarily the special education folks in particular, but the CALPADS folks, and that is with regards to your post-secondary status or PSTS surveys. Simply identifying who should be surveyed does cause confusion. So remember that this data is submitted from the special education data system and it has been collected for several years. County offices and CELPAs can assist new special education coordinators and can attend end of year or PSTS specific training. Again, we do have data population trainings specific to the PSTS file and specific to the PSTS file submitted in end of year 4 for students with disabilities on the CSIS YouTube training channel. And you can show that to your county offices, to your CELPAs, to your special education folks in order to help them to determine who to survey for PSTS in end of year 4. So encouraging your special education coordinators to submit PSTS outcomes as soon as possible will allow for reconciliation of data and accounting for students who have not yet provided responses. And there is some helpful information on the PSTS survey located in the CALPADS user manual for the PSTS file. All right, that concludes our discussion of specific file types and data elements that are submitted in end of year 4. Let's now take a look at our end of year 4 reports. For end of year 4, there are 5 aggregate reports, and they are shown in the left in blue or green, teal, something like that. And there are also multiple supporting reports that provide more specific counts and detailed lists of students who are counted in the aggregate reports. And again, your aggregate reports must be reviewed and approved. We need to see that green check mark in CALPADS before you're able to certify. And the supporting reports will help you to correct the aggregate reports, to drill down, to find more detailed information, and to reconcile CALPADS with the local student information system. For most LEAs, these reports can be pulled at the start of the end of the year and monitored until you're ready for certification. Typically, your CELPAs will wait until they can review an LEA approved revision. So the earlier you approve your end of year 3 and 4 reports, will result in an earlier review and approval by your CELPA. So the more time you will have to work on data quality for special education data. And data quality for special education data is very important. Special education can become litigious, and a lot of the relevant policy is shown to be compliant or implemented based on the data that's reported in CALPADS. And so ensuring that the special education submission includes accurate and reliable data is very important for LEAs. We have placed a link to the end of year 4 data report mapping guides in the CALPADS user manual, again in the notes section of this slide. And those report mapping guides will help you to determine the data elements that are used for your aggregate reports and will help your subject matter experts at various departments in your LEA to identify the sources of that data so that they can verify accuracy of those reports. Okay, let's talk about post-secondary status data analysis. PSTS data can be submitted at any time. So make it a practice of uploading PSTS data just prior to the start of end of year, just prior to May 6th, so that the reports will show you the students and their outcomes. It will also show you the students who need to be surveyed but have not yet been surveyed, or at the very least have not yet had survey information submitted to CALPADS. And this will allow the special education team to target those who have yet to respond, and will allow you and the special education team to work on data quality for PSTS data with the relevant aggregate report there. Okay, we do have links to training, guidance resources, and documentation that are available to everyone. So these are resources that are available to you in an on-demand format, self-paced format, but they're also available to other folks at your LEA who may be interested in some guidance on the Students with Disabilities data submission that occurs in end of year 4. So again, we have links in the CALPADS user manual for all of the file types that are submitted in end of year 4 with the status, plan, meet, and serve file types, as well as the page for the post-secondary status file type. It should be noted that post-secondary status is submitted in fall and in end of year, but is particularly submitted for students with disabilities in the end of year 4 submission. We have linked guidance from the CDE for reporting data on students with disabilities, different special education file submission scenarios, an FAQ, and appropriate statuses for and non-participation reason codes for exit categories and completion statuses. Again, from the CDE, linked to on this slide here. We've got a couple links from the CSIS YouTube training channel, but this time the top one actually comes to you from the CDE. They are currently going to be going out and doing some special education roadshows for the 24 to 25 academic year. But for the 23 to 24 academic year around this time of year, they also went out and did some special education regional roadshows. And we've placed the links to the recordings from last year's road shows on this slide here. As soon as Dominic is done out there and we have relevant materials from this year, we will try to get this updated. And we did also create some on-demand guidance on creating and maintaining SSIDs for students with disabilities in CALPADS on the CSIS YouTube training channel here. And that concludes our discussion of end of year 4.
Question about slide 44. Is there a hierarchy for multiple outcomes or transition students? So they're referring to the PSTS. Is that what she's referring to? Slide 44 in the PowerPoint is the PSTS. This is slide 44.
Yeah.
Okay, so slide 44 is the PSTS survey. So they're asking about the hierarchy of outcomes. So there are no hierarchies. You can submit multiple outcomes of PSTS survey results. The only problem that occurs is if your SIS do not cannot store multiple outcomes of the survey results, then if that is the case, you will need to add the additional outcomes manually to CALPADS. So, because sometimes the PSTS survey is a replacement type survey. So if you have multiple outcomes and you can only insert report to one in your SIS or SEDS, then you will need to then submit the additional ones in CALPADS. CALPADS will accept multiple outcomes of the survey. However, except for if, let's say, you have a survey result of went to college and then did not respond or something in that essence, you can't have those two together because that doesn't make sense.
All right. Thank you,
Okay.
Kyron. Was there anything else that we should address from the chat? Brian at 1055, is the PSTS for students with disabilities coming from the special education SIS, or our kind of lingo for that is the
Fed.
SEDS, the special
Yeah.
education data system? And the answer is yes. So this does come from the SEDS via the automated transfer, but it's always good to compare the data in CALPADS and the data in the SEDS. And then also, when you submit the data to CALPADS, it can help you to identify folks who have not yet been surveyed but will need to.
LTL student group required for this EOY. The data will be derived, Charlene. You just have to report the SILA status of a student and report the SINF, and then based on that, that data will be derived at least for this phase one of the LTL implementation, because it phase one will only be reports. So all of the data that you currently have in CalPads for an EL student will be validated and analyzed and then reflected on the reports that Matt indicated. Right, Matt? You can move on.
That concludes end of year 4, and with it, all 4 of the end of year submissions. So we've kind of gone through the primer for each of the individual data collections that will begin on May 6th. Let's now start wrapping up and providing some reminders for everybody. So as you all know too well, CalPADS and data management can be somewhat of an endless job. Even though we are in support of a healthy work-life balance, we do have to remind you here that CalPADS work will be continuing. So this slide contains a list of the tasks that are current and that are ongoing in CalPADS that are relevant at end of year. So LEA should be regularly updating student data in your local SIS and in CalPADS as well. We typically understand that the data update in the SIS is the most regular data update that will occur at an LEA, but CalPADS should be following that with relative frequency. We do want CalPADS and the SIS to match throughout an academic year as much as possible. LEAs should be monitoring special education student meetings, particularly the timeliness of those, initial evaluations, annual plan reviews, those statutory meetings. should be monitored for timeliness. Third, please coordinate with your business office on the CARS or CONAP certification. Again, not all of the data in end of year 2 comes from CARS, but in many cases, the vast majority does come from CARS. Sometimes to such an extent that you're really just kind of updating, 5 to 10 SPRG records and then done with the submission portion of end of year 2. And so we do recommend that you coordinate with your business office on CARS certification. And I believe it's the winter certification in CARS that will inform CALPADS in end of year 2. You should prepare and test students for the summative LPAC. Again, the cutoff date for that is May 15th. The really hard cutoff is May 31st for testing. So any testing results after May 31st will not be able to be used this academic year. So make sure that you're getting students up into TOMS now for assessments and for testing, particularly with the LPAC, but also for the CASP and the California Science Test, the CAST. Next, LEA should stay current with training and for flash communications. If you are in this room, I give you full credit for staying current on trainings. You're in the first occurrence of end of year training this academic year. So you are doing great on that score, but please do monitor your inbox for any flash communications, listserv messages. We still have one statewide leadership training series with Rebecca from Fresno. So if you're interested in joining that with some leadership and other folks at your LEA, please do. And stay up to date on all of the user manual of the resources for end of year 4. Please do attend the CALPADS Q&A. Today is Wednesday, so the CALPADS Q&A will be occurring this afternoon at 3 p.m. We may have a host that we haven't seen in a while. I don't want to call anybody out while they're just in here visiting, but we may have a host that we haven't seen in a while at the CALPADS Q&A this afternoon. And please do attend the special education office hours as well. Those are held, I believe, currently every other Monday, held by Dominic Johnson in the special education division at the CDE. And if you did have a lot of questions about end of year 4 and about the special education data that's submitted in end of year, I would highly recommend attending Dominic's special education office hours again, and that's every other Monday. And you can register on the CDE webpage. Okay, CALPADS to TOMS. So CALPADS sends TOMS the most current open primary and short-term enrollments with enrollment statuses of 10 or 30, 2 grades K through or 4 grades K through 12. So if a student is concurrently enrolled, CALPADS will send the enrollment with the most recent start date. So the most recent current open primary or short-term enrollment is sent from CALPADS to TOMS. Therefore, concurrent enrollments, CCEs, do not need to be resolved for a student to test. So if you have CCEs, we're getting close to May 15th, you're worried that you need to test a student within 30 days of their initial enrollment. If they are TBD, if there's a different status, there's other worries. If you're worried and you need to get them tested, they have a CCE, you can still send them up to TOMS. This will not affect the TOMS assessment processes. A couple of things to consider in preparation for LPAC and for the CASP. So you should continue to submit on an ongoing basis your enrollment records, your SIMF records, as well as your student program, student English language acquisition records, and your records for students with disabilities with the status meetings plans and services files. And we ask you in end of year to not pre-populate your SENR enrollment exits in CALPADS yet if students have not yet completed testing. Pre-populating your SENR enrollment exits will drop students from the testing lists. And so we recommend that you do not pre-populate your SENR enrollment exits in the end of year. Okay, data discrepancies. So end of year data discrepancies are currently running. You will have to filter between each of the end of year data submissions to see all of your errors. But if you select the current academic year with 24-25, select your LEA, you can toggle between all 4 of the end of year submissions under the certification cycle filter here, and you are able to see your data discrepancies for all 4 end-of-year submissions. And these will be the vast majority of the errors that are currently triggering for you in end-of-year. So if you do begin submitting records, you have been submitting records on an ongoing basis. If you do have what you believe is good data in CALPADS or complete data in CALPADS, it would be a great idea to go ahead and go to this data discrepancies page and to see what errors are generating for you so that you can go ahead and begin resolving those errors now. You don't have to wait until May 6th to begin resolving your errors. You don't have to wait till May 6th to begin submitting your records in a lot of cases. And this data discrepancies page really has been quite a bit of help, really, since it was introduced towards helping LEAs to get a quicker jump on certification and a higher quality of data that is certified. Okay, we talked about all 4 of the end of year submissions, but we haven't yet talked about the cohort reports because cohort reports are not part of certification for any of the end of year data collections. So your cohort reports are report 15.1, that's an aggregate report with counts, and 15.2, which is a reporting report which provides student detail. The CDE will pull your cohort reports on August 15th. So it's incredibly pertinent, incredibly important that you review your cohort reports, particularly 15.1, for accuracy and make any changes that you need in order to reflect accuracy prior to May 15th. Those cohort reports are used and often cited as used to calculate the adjusted cohort graduation rate, or ACGR, on the California school dashboard, but they're used in so many of the dashboard calculations. Your chronic absenteeism rates, your A to G completion rates, your CTE completer rates, all use cohort in the denominator of their calculations. And so if you have inaccurate cohort numbers, that will affect quite a few elements of the California school dashboard for you this year. So in reviewing your cohort reports, you can identify potential dropouts based on exit reason codes and possibly clear up any discrepancies when you do identify those dropouts. Your 24 to 25 counts won't be complete until all of your students have exited this year, but you can catch students who have left already and who have continued their education but have gone unreported in CALPAD. So even though you'll need to wait really until the last day of school occurs for every student in your LEA in order to accurately get numbers for cohort, you can look at students who have already left your LEA now in order to kind of ensure accuracy in at least some aspects of those cohort reports early here. All right, we want to remind you that the CDE annually purges their direct certification results and their foster youth data from CALPADS. So LEAs should download their direct certification, their direct certification results prior to June 30th of this year if you have a need to track students who were directly certified by CALPADS this year. So all students exited with a student exit reason code of anything other than E155, which is year-end enrollment exit, or E156, which is grade 12 continuing, will not be sent over for direct certification matching. If there is a need to keep historical records of former foster youth reports in the 24 to 25 academic year, LEAs need to download report 5.9, which is a copy of the report from June 30th, 2025. A copy of report 5.9 from June 30th, 2025 for historical records for former foster youth. The former foster youth report does not span academic years. So on July 1st, 2025, the day after June 30th, the report will be refreshed and will begin showing only students who continue to be foster in the 25 to 26 academic year.
You have completed this module. Please continue to the next video. Thank you.